Okay, sister asked 10 tips for a happy marriage. Okay, how much time do we have? Okay, I've made a little list, and I'll just go through it quickly. Obviously, there's so many things that could be said about this, but just 10 tips that I guess I would, 10 points maybe I would give to my own children, or when they get married, or that I've tried to instill in them. Number one, have a vision for your family. Have a vision for your family, and make that vision together. Create that vision, and like some kind of mission statement, if you can, even. Okay, together as a couple when you get married. And what that does is it gives you both like a guiding star to aim towards, and it helps you to keep bringing each other back to that vision, right? So that's number one. Formulate a vision for your family. And a great book that talks about that is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. It's a great book. I love it. It's in the same series as the 7 Habits series of Stephen Covey. But he has one for families, and I think online he even has a family mission statement tool you can look up. If you look up, I think it's called, if you just type Stephen Covey family mission statement tool, it should come up. And at least it gives you some kind of guidelines as to, how to write something that will inspire you both as a couple. So that's number one. Number two, figure out each other's love languages. Figure out what each other's love languages are. And if you go to www.5lovelanguages.com, okay, that's the website from the author of the book about the 5 love languages. And what the love languages are is basically each of us has what he puts forward, the author, is that there are 5 kind of ways that we feel and express love. Okay? And for each of us, there's probably 1 or 2 of those 5 that are the most significant. Right? And if you know what your love languages are, right? And if you figure out what your spouse's love language is, then it's going to really help you to fulfill each other's needs, for love, I mean, to feel loved and that kind of thing, right? Let me see if I can find a quick list of what the love languages are. You can look it up, but I just know off the top of my head, one of them is like giving gifts. For some people, gifts are like a really important love language. Like if they don't get gifts, they really don't feel like you love them, right? Maybe for a lot of women, that's the case. That's why we have the kind of thing in society that women like to receive flowers, right? There's something symbolic that sometimes your spouse might not think is very important, but for you, it signifies love, right? Another one is like, I think it's physical touch, could be a love language. And I've forgotten what the 5 love languages are, but if you just look them up, figure out what your spouse's love language is, and try to meet the love languages. I'm just trying to quickly get it in front of me. Yeah. So the 5 love languages are: number 1, words of affirmation. Number 2, physical touch. Number 3, receiving gifts. Number 4, quality time, like undivided attention sort of time. And that was number 4. Now number 5 is acts of service. So for example, if your love language is acts of service, it really means a lot to you that somebody serves you food, Like if they don't serve you food, you don't feel properly loved by them. For example, this is just an example. If your love language is quality time, then you crave uninterrupted and focused conversations, right? You want to have like special one-to-one moments, getaways. That means a lot to you in order to feel loved. If your love language is words of affirmation, you need not just somebody to assume that you know that you're loved, but for them to keep verbally communicating that, for example, or through actions, saying, appreciating, affirming, encouraging, praising, So I think when you know your love language and when you know your love language and you know your spouse's, it really helps. Okay. So that was number 2. Number 3, do your best to satisfy each other's intimate needs, sexual needs. Okay. I would say that's an important tip. Whether you feel like it or not, just do your best. And that goes for either spouse, right? What was that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Be feminine. If you're a woman, be as feminine as you can be. And if you're a man, be as masculine as you can be. Because opposites attract. When the more polarized your masculinity and femininity is, the more attraction there tends to be. Anyway, I don't have time to go into that, but yeah. Number 5, your spouse is not responsible for your happiness. For me, that's an important tip. As soon as you start thinking, my spouse is the one who should be making me happy, then every time you're unhappy, you project that onto your spouse. When actually it's your job to sort yourself out, If you've got, I don't know, self-esteem issues, if you've got whatever issues, right? You've got to find out what needs need to be met in your own life and what things you can take responsibility for to fix that. It's not a case of expecting your spouse to fill the hole that is in your life. Number 6, don't become complacent in your marriage. It's really easy when things are high and things are going really well, especially, early on. And even when you have kids and you're so busy with young kids, it's easy to be really together. But it's also easy to become complacent the more you've been together. So don't become complacent. Complacency is the beginning of, can be the beginning of a negative spiral. Don't become complacent. The next tip, be positive and optimistic. And try to solve problems as they come. People sometimes they brush things under the carpet. Something that's bothering them. In something their spouse has said or done. And they will just keep quiet about it. But actually it's building up a lot of resentment. It's better to just have the discussion. Have the discussion. However, obviously respectfully, but also even if it gets heated, the point is, if an argument helps you both to understand each other and get closer at the end of it, then it's worth it. But if you just keep brushing things under the carpet, then they tend to grow. When you brush problems under the carpet, they tend to get bigger and bigger. At the same time, I've written here, be willing to ignore and overlook. So you've got to pick your, I don't want to call them battles, but pick your battles. Pick the things that are really important and don't sweat the rest. If you're gonna hang on every single word, if you're gonna analyze every single movement, if you're everything that annoys you when you're living with somebody, especially if it's going to be something you're going to bring up, then you can't live with anyone. You know, you just can't. It's not going to work with anyone. So there's a certain level of let it go, right? But if it's important, deal with it, face it, have the discussion, solve the problem, right? If it's something, if it's small things, you know, try to overlook them, just as you want your spouse to overlook your mistakes, right? Your little stuff, idiosyncrasies. Okay, the next tip, forgive one another and move on. So if we can learn to have conversations where, you know, inevitably, if you live with somebody long enough, you're going to annoy each other, right? You're going to do things that hurt one another as well. It's going to happen at some point or another, right? Any two human beings. I mean, just even having flatmates, that happens, right? So can you imagine if you're married to that person as well, and you know, your lives are so intertwined in so many ways. So once you've had the discussion, once the person's apologized or you've apologized, try to create the culture in your home that once the air has been cleared and you have said your sorries, that you then move on and you don't allow that thing to hang over the marriage, right, for the next argument. It doesn't keep coming up in future arguments. You let it go now, you know, because you've forgiven. That's what forgiveness means. You don't keep bringing it up, right? Especially, and I would say going along with that is learn how to give an adequate apology, right? An adequate apology, not just a little sorry, but an adequate apology, and create that culture in your home. The ninth tip is have regular weekly meetings as a couple, right? Running a family is like managing a project sometimes, you know? In some ways it really is. Of course, like we'd like to just do it on the fly and, you know, just go with the flow. But a lot of the times when arguments happen, I think you can trace them back to the fact that you had a lack of communication, or that you didn't discuss and your expectations didn't match. And sometimes it's operationally, like on a day-to-day basis, right? Somebody booked something and the other person needed them on that day and blah, 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 and then there's an argument. If you have a regular weekly meeting where you just catch up with each other, what's your week going to be like, to have people's expectations met, and at least to know what your spouse is doing and what you're doing, you can better meet each other's needs in that way, right? So have regular weekly meetings, and make sure you have regular private time, you know. That's easy when you first get married, but believe me, when you have kids, it's very easy to put regular private time to have romantic, you know, I don't know, dinners or just time together, you know, romantically. Sometimes it's easy to put that on the back burner, and if you do that enough times, then that area of your life can suffer. So protect and keep up the sort of romantic aspect of your relationship by investing time into that and maybe carving out time for that. So those are my 10 quick tips.
Ba-da-da-da.